turns out some countries have a better idea of where to find it than others.
Here to share what we can learn from the happiest countries in the world is happiness researcher and professor from a really, really great school, Western University, Gillian Mandich. You didn't go there or anything.
I didn't go to, yeah.
Of course I went to Western.
Of course, best school ever.
So, Gillian, this is really exciting because there was a study that was done. It was called the World Happiness Report. And out of that report, it actually ranks all of the countries in the world from the happiest to the least happiest. Canada, if you take a look at us closely, number 6, not too shabby. Shabby. I want to know who decides that they're going to do this and for what reason.
Absolutely. You know, anytime you hear in the news like world's happiest countries or world's fittest countries, it's really important before you start digging into what they actually found to take a step back and ask a few questions. You know, who conducted this? Are they credible people? What data did they use? And make sure that their conclusions make sense. So when we talk about this World Happiness Report, as a researcher, I've looked into the study extensively, and it's a very credible study. So they had a big international team of researchers come together and pool tons of different data from 157 countries. It actually started back in 2011. There's a country called Bhutan. It's actually a Buddhist kingdom in the Eastern Himalayas.
I know, Will and Kate were just there.
Oh, were they?
Yeah. They're very happy.
They're very
happy. Yes.
So they wanted to figure out how happy their country was. From there, the UN jumped on board and they started to realize, especially in terms of like public policy, happiness matters. And so how do we assess that? How do we rank that? And how do we use that to inform policy? So that's how the study came about.
Interesting. Okay, so how do they determine which country is the happiest?
So they give them stars, no? They rate them on a scale of 0 to 10. So based on that, you're assigned a scale. So for example, Denmark, they got the top scores at 7.5. What's really exciting about the report is that there's 6 key factors that are used to identify happiness. So things like gross domestic product, social support, healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life choices, generosity, and perception of corruption. So based on all those, it's a very comprehensive assessment. Just like when you look at your health, you want to take like a holistic or complete look at your health, you know, mind, body, spirit. In terms of happiness, this is a very comprehensive or holistic view of happiness. So it's a really strong indicator.
Perception of corruption is an interesting one. So basically, if you think that if you're suspicious that your government is corrupt, then you are less happy.
Yeah,
okay.
Potentially, yeah.
There's no trust.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Right?
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Canada. Not corrupt, as far as we know. We're ranked pretty high, and that was nice to see. Number 6. So what do you think that we're doing right in Canada?
So, you know, in Canada, it's not just our maple syrup and our politeness that makes us happy, right?
It makes me happy to be here.
But if you look at we have really good social support systems. We have excellent health care. We have really good government. We're a multicultural country. So from that, because we have all these, healthy life expectancy, we score really high on a lot of indicators. So we're in the top 10, we're 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
4 out of 5 countries in the top 5 are the Nordic countries. So what was it? Denmark in first, 3 Iceland, 4 Norway, 5 Finland. What can we learn from them?
Iceland is actually a really good example of something we can learn from. So Iceland in 2008, when we had the big global recession, their stocks plummeted. The country almost went bankrupt. Yet, after the recession, they rated their happiness as a country as higher than before. And if we take a step back and look, well, why is that? Because you would think maybe it would be the opposite, right? But everyone in Iceland, they rank the highest on having someone to lean on, someone to support them, so that someone they can go to, someone that they can trust, they had that. So, like the song is right? We all need somebody to lean on.
We're all
yeah.
Okay, so, those countries, those Nordic countries, they also have legitimate winters. And many people are really miserable in the cold. We just came out of it. We're starting to. But these are countries that are saying that they're so happy, these people. So what is the disconnect here? Why the contradiction?
It's a really interesting observation because a lot of the countries near the top, they're cold, right? They're northern. But from the data right now, we actually can't infer any real reason. So it's something to look into further. But at this point, there is no conclusion as to, colder countries are happier. However, we can have solidarity because all of us in these cold climates, we all can share in the feeling of scraping off your car in the winter and bundling up, and also happiness.
And trying to cuddle up with someone when it's cold. Right?
I would rather we be miserable together.
Exactly.
Makes it so
Which
much
then
better.
makes us happy.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's true.
We got it solved.
Okay, so I'm the American out of the bunch, and I am not surprised that we're so much farther down at number 13. But I am curious, you know, what makes us all the way down at 13? What are we doing wrong?
So, you know, the land of opportunity has some opportunity to be happier, right? They didn't even crack the top 10. So,
I know.
when you look at the states compared to, say, Canada, for example, their GDP, their gross domestic product, is actually higher than Canada. But we have like a strong social support, healthy life expectancy, things like that. So the net of all of our other things actually put us higher. Another really interesting thing, if you look at the data for the states, you know how there's like an income gap or an income disparity? You hear people talk about the difference between the people that make the most money and the least money. There's something similar for happiness. So if you look at the states, the gap between the people that say they're the happiest and the people that say they're the least happy, they rank really, really low. So out of the 157 countries, the US actually ranks 87.
Wow.
Yeah, so that gap adds to it too.
It adds to that for sure.
Yeah.
I come from the news world, and sadly, anybody who watches, listens, consumes any kind of news knows that if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, the more horrific, awful, violent the story, that's what's going to come out first in a newscast, and which is a really tough thing. And so the flip side is when we're talking about happiness, why isn't it the other way? Why isn't there like a happy news channel? And why are we not celebrating more the good stuff? Like, hey, today down the street, so and so helped so and so cross the
So-and-so
street.
built a beautiful treehouse, and is that
Right? It's always got to be so dark negative. You know, so what is there to that? Why aren't we celebrating happiness more?
You know, Aristotle, he said that happiness is the aim and the purpose of life. And as a happiness researcher, I completely agree with that. And when you look, at the end of the day, if you strip away everything else, we all just want to be happy, right? Right? And so when it motivates what we do, who we interact with, how we act, and yet it's not something that's commonly talked about. What's also really interesting is that in terms of happiness, when you look at the news, you know, like it's not really a catchy thing. It's not super like sexy like other topics are, right? But when we talk about like the World Happiness Report and things like that, it actually can bring it to the forefront. Another really interesting thing, you know, it doesn't really have a place in the media, but it also doesn't often have a place in the government. And that's changing thanks to things like the World Happiness Report. So different countries are getting ministers of happiness. The United Arab Emirates, they actually have a minister of happiness now. So people are starting to get jobs in that, which is all bringing it to the forefront, which makes me happy.
Wow, that's great. That is great. Yeah. And it was also studied that you could also just watch animal videos on YouTube, and that will make you happy. That's fact.
I love
And
Ellen.
Ellen as well. Hey, Gillian, we do feel happier. Thanks.
Yay.
We do. We've got a recap of all of this great information for you at thesocial.ca right now after today's show. Stay happy, everybody. We'll be right back after this.